hate is a strong word.
Because it's so awkward.
You don't do that at all. Really? You don't do that at all, Cassandra? Are you ready?
Always ready.
High five. Wait,
Go.
can you not give me better energy? It's like, it doesn't help.
We just did it. That's why. High five.
No. Hello friends, my name is Wilson.
I'm Cass.
And today we are welcoming you back to season 2 of Two Kids and a Startup. The format's going to be a little bit different. We're going to be honing in on some hot topics, less about our weekly therapy sessions.
Or journaling.
Or journaling, yeah.
And so what are we kicking it off with this week?
We're going to be talking about remote work versus working in the office. I think a lot of questions that people have been asking is about why did we decide to opt into an office environment, paying thousands of dollars, when today we can actually have a remote workforce.
We do have a remote workforce.
We actually do. We're in a very unique situation where we do have a remote workforce, but at the same time, we still ended up forking out thousands of dollars to have an office space. And I think there's a lot of insights that we can share as to reasoning as to why we decide to invest in it, because I think that the ROI is definitely there.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. Why don't we start off with our experience with office, like working in an office, or
Yeah,
why
because we
as an
both have two
entrepreneur?
different backgrounds.
Totally.
When it comes to how we work and where we work. So for me, I've been working mostly within an office environment, very corporate, open concepts. And there's always a lot of people walking in and out, conversations until COVID hit. And that is when the world really was locked down and I was working from home most of the time. On top of that, at the same time, when I was on maternity leave and I was working, I was also caring for the baby. So that really allowed me the flexibility to be working from home.
I guess, like, from an entrepreneur standpoint, how do you feel about working from home? And like when we made the decision to rent an office, like that transition, like what really was the reason why you're like, oh, we have to rent an office? Pretty much that was like how you felt.
Yeah, I feel like it's an unpopular topic because everyone, 9 out of 10 people, they're always for remote workforce.
But that
remote
is,
home.
but that okay, on that note, it is because they are employees and they're working for someone. Of course they want that flexibility.
Yes.
Let's make a coffee. Let's make my
This is
2-hour
true.
lunch.
This is true.
It's very different
This
than
is true.
owning your own business.
This is true. And so, yeah, you're right. Like it was never a question. We never even went back and forth with it when we were deciding whether or not we should invest in an office. But for me, I had the experience working from home, and at the same time, I've also was caring for my newborn. And in that experience, I felt very alone, and it felt like there was no separation from work. And so I would go upstairs, make dinner, go back downstairs, do some work, and have my meetings downstairs. And so it just felt like there was no segregation, and mentally it didn't feel great.
And at that moment, I remember you're like, I haven't left the house in a week, Wilson.
Yeah, I know. I literally went on maternity leave from my office downstairs, and then I came back, left again for my second mat leave, and didn't see anyone. It was weird.
Yeah.
And so mentally, I think I really do love having a place to go to so that I can zone in and be like, this is work. And then when I come in, I can be like, work's at the door, and be focused on family time and my personal life.
It actually really helped too. Like I noticed a big difference in terms of your productivity as well, and the focus that you can have.
I was productive at work.
You were
at
productive.
home.
Yes, you were. You're extra productive when you're in the office. And I think it's really true, because now we can actually put down our thoughts and ideas on a whiteboard, which we love so much.
Which you love so much.
We can have meetings, and there's like, this is proper work zone. Like we don't need to worry about like the kids. We don't need to worry about anything. We're like, this is work.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think that was a really big big decision. Now, my experience of renting an office as an entrepreneur goes back way back, right? And I still remember at this point in time, it was like when I was like 23, when I decided that I needed to rent an office. And at that time, I wasn't even making much money, but I knew that I needed an office. I was working remote out of a coffee shop for 6 months, and after 6 months, the business is sort of picking up ish. I got some clients. It was a tutoring academy that we had. And then I'm like, no, Cass, gotta rent my first office.
But why?
It validated something for me as an entrepreneur at that moment.
Legitimacy?
Yeah.
Credibility?
I think that on the first surface level, sure, it's for credibility for other people to see. But deeper down, just reflecting back, it has a lot to do with how I view myself and how I conduct myself. And as a result of that, now that I'm a business owner, I have an office, now I need to act accordingly. Now I need to be more professional. Now I need to act like a business owner, right? And I think that really helped me. Like, it was a sink or swim kind of thing. Now I'm like, every single month, regardless of not you have a client, you need to make ends meet. You have to pay your rent. You got to make rent. It's as simple as that. And that was a really big critical shift in my entrepreneurial journey right from the beginning. And then for me, another reason is the surroundings really inspire who you are, and it helps you, propels you to think differently, and mental shift. And that's the reason why when I was here, I'm like, oh my goodness, look at the view. We have to be here.
Yeah. We had conversations about, is the cost worth the money? Because right now we're working at a shared office space. And you know, you're getting a smaller space, but you're getting the amenities and the view is beautiful, and that comes at a cost. But having said that, we ended up going forward with this because, especially for you, you felt like it was important to feel inspired and have a space that feel inspired, even though the cost doesn't necessarily match the same value.
And the results have shown for itself in the last few years. It actually did pay off. Like, we were now in the tech industry, and we are thinking further. We are progressing with how we should act. And once again, it's the really mindset, your surroundings and everything. And I think that it has so much of an impact, because a lot of people, new entrepreneurs, they're considering like, oh, does my surroundings have an impact? 100% it does.
But you know what? I'm all for the remote workforce. Like, there is definitely some beauty in being able to have the time to do your personal errands, have your time to integrate your life, because it's not as simple as 9 to 5 and this is my job sometimes. And sometimes, like for us, we're having meetings at 10 p.m. And you know, having the ability to work remotely allowed us to also be able to work remotely in Hawaii for 2 months and manage our team that way. So yes, there is value in here, but also being able to learn how to work remotely, I think, is also just as important.
That is very interesting that you say that. And I think that's really where we are heading towards in terms of like the new way of working, is that especially with Gen Zs, Gen Alpha, they're working with a more sense of like, hey, is this part of my values? Is this part of my mission? And they're so much more driven by that type of values, that if the workplace can be integrated with how they live their life, this is the type of work that they are going to be able to commit to,
that they're demanding for.
Exactly.
Like, ever since COVID, that culture has shifted.
100%.
We can't get people to be not offering flexibility and not being mindful of their personal life within their professional life.
You're way ahead of the curve when it comes down to that, especially with your experience working at Lulu. That is what you guys have been preaching all along, right?
Yeah.
Like that work-life balance and that flexibility, the open office concept. This was before it became the norm, sort of, or like we're in the cusp of that right now.
Yeah.
Which is very interesting, and that's how we run our team, and to your point, that's how we're able to also work from Hawaii for 2 months, which is super, super cool. Yeah. But at the same time, it does come with the pros and cons when you're managing a team that is partially remote. I think that's something that we can definitely dive into, because certain times I'm like, I wish he's right beside me, or I wish I can just lean over his screen and just tell him, move this here and we're done. Because there's so many times where I'm like, God damn, it's like, it could have been just so easy if you were to just move this line to this line and it's done. Or, hey, you know what?
And not schedule a Zoom for it.
Yeah. Or like wait for 2 days and be like, oh my goodness, this is still not how I want it. And then I have to go and paint and be like, okay, move this here. And like,
so let's talk about that. Like, do you not feel like you're able to collaborate more when you're working remotely?
100%. Like, I am still very hands-on. I like my whiteboards. I like to be able to convey my message, and I'm much more visual. So I think like having that in-person type of meetings allows those conversations to really like make sense.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Yes.
I do think that. And
Have a high five. Yeah.
one of the little things. But I do agree with you when it comes to collaboration, you know, building relationships and connections with your team. Like, it's those conversations that you have on the side of your desk that really builds your relationships. And having said that, it builds the culture, because people feel more connected to their workplace, not just by the work that they're doing, but the people that they surround themselves with every day. And so, you know, like, even having the team members that we have here in person, whenever they come in person, we obviously, like, you can feel the bond forming, whether it is like things that we're not talking about work and within work. And when we are talking about work, you're able to read body language. You're able to know when you should speak, when you shouldn't speak. And I think that is very valuable.
And the sense of camaraderie, I think, is going to be there when it's in person. And that's the type of feeling that you can't really replicate through an online experience. Like at Night Market, when we are, you know, grinding until like 2-3 a.m. or like we're there together, hands-on, doing things together, which that feeling afterwards when we go for like late night dinner, it's like, damn, we conquered this together, right? And that bond is something that Zoom can't replace.
Agreed.
Yeah. And at the same time, like, being able to communicate with your team while you're working and getting things done at the same time, I think that is great.
Totally.
Right? But then some of our team members are on a completely different time zone. So when we are off work, they're on work. So it's just like working with a VA, which I'm like, doesn't feel too good about that.
There's a different way of managing productivity when it comes to managing remote employees.
Yeah.
And I would say there needs to be more of a conscious effort on the managers, the leaders, to take that effort to communicate. Like, what is it that they're working on? What are the priorities? What is the work, like, what happens when conversations are being made or decisions are being made in person, and how do you relay that type of information to a remote team? Like, that communication that needs to be more intentful when guiding a remote team. I
you know what, I'm totally guilty of that. Like, as you said, I still remember earlier on even just the last project, decisions that we make on the fly, I ended up not conveying it to our other team members, and in turn there's a communication breakdown. I'm like, oh, where was the issue when I thought I communicated so well already, but it was just not within the entire team. So I think like that was a lesson that I learned. And actually, I think that it is very important to have an office environment, because it's much more efficient.
Yes.
Yeah, like for example, like a setup like this, we can just like when we're done, especially because we're creating content as well.
Yeah.
Like having the setup done and us just jumping in here and just like let's go is so much more productive than if I were to have to set up for like 30, 40 minutes, set everything up, and then later
We
on.
tried that at home.
Oh, God.
When we tried to start recording podcasts in the living room.
Oh, God.
And even like the mindset was so different because we were just like, I was ready to go to sleep. You're ready to do a podcast. And
bad.
the energy
It's
to
just not
even do it together, it wasn't there. It wasn't made up for there.
No.
And
It sucks a lot because it's like, and from my perspective, I'm like, I already don't want to do this on a Sunday night. I don't want to like, set up the 2 mics, set it up like on the computer, make sure sound check everything. And at the same time, think about, oh, how is it going to look? And then think about what we're talking about and then get you in here. And then now our energies don't match. And I have a certain expectation. You have a certain expectation.
it's not good for the relationship. Wouldn't recommend it. But
We shot like what, 8, 9 episodes and it was horrendous.
all gone to shit. We should release those.
We should definitely release those. And it's like, wow.
The amount of arguments and conversations
man.
that were not complete. Yeah, wouldn't recommend it.
It was
so
tough.
actually, the lesson
tough.
here is really like if there is an opportunity where you can leverage your physical office space to be it, like for us, we made it into a ad hoc studio space, multi-purpose use, have meetings in here. I think, that is something you want to consider when it comes to your ROI.
100%. Set yourself up for
Not a
success.
clear ROI.
It is a clear ROI in my perspective.
Indirect.
Indirect, fine. It's not like you're going to invest $1,000 and you can get back $2,000. But nonetheless, set yourself up for success. This is exactly what it is. Like having this environment allows you to set yourself up for success, whether it's creation of content, whether it's having this environment to be able to be productive enough to have team meetings that are very collaborative, right? And like on the other hand of that is remote work allows us to tap into a much more diverse talent pool, which we wouldn't have gotten access to if we were only having local talent.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah, totally. I think being able to hire remotely allows us to have diverse experiences come through and shine, allows us to potentially save from a cost perspective. If we're
100%.
looking for, market rates in Canada, US, it's not cheap.
It's not cheap.
And so being able to hire in countries that
Malaysia, Singapore, right? They have like top talents too, right? And
Yeah.
if you're thinking about devs, Russia, like they have really good talents.
yeah.
Yeah. So I think like that's where we're able to tap into a very diverse type of talents, which is so cool to see because I'm a very big fan of the Asian type of creative work because I feel like in order for them to stand out, their messaging needs to be so much tighter. Their graphics needs to be much more louder, much more innovative. Like there's always something going on. Whereas in North America, we don't have that type of competition compared to Asia, right? So the type of graphics are something that I'm really, really like appreciating a lot. Like Sam is killing it with her design. I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so being able to access that has been great.
One thing that really I hate when I am doing these online meetings is you're always like, who's gonna go first? Who's unmuting? Who's responding? Like no one. And especially when they don't have their camera on, they're like, is it my turn? Okay. And there's always like the quiet dead air.
Hate is a strong word.
Because it's so awkward. I'm like, who goes? Okay, are you gonna go? And then the first 5 minutes and the meeting times, oh my God. So if you have a meeting at 10, you probably won't start talking about what you need to talk about. Give it about 10:10 because there's technology. Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Is my mic on? Can you hear me?
That's
Sound?
that's a you thing.
No, it's every single person I have met with on top of that in all my corporate companies. And it's so funny because when I worked at a really large global company, there was not enough meeting space for the amount of people here. And so
physically.
So I would be sitting across my teammate having a Zoom meeting and we're still going like, hello, can you hear me? When we could literally be having it on the side of our desk.
I do think that having the camera on is important.
Yes, especially when you're hiring globally. I think there's a bit of okay, so when you're hiring a global team, it's hard to be able to validate who they are. Especially, you're not going to meet them in person, so you don't have that. So if you don't have if you don't even know what they look like, how do you start building that trust in the relationship to bring them on as your team?
And on top of that, it's like we all are guilty of the fact that during meeting, if it's not on your topic, you're just like on another tab and multitasking a lot.
I don't do that.
You don't do that at all. Really? You don't do that at all, Cassandra?
Who has the time to listen to everything? I'm like, this topic isn't for me, so I'm just gonna do this.
There you
and then
go.
I casually always will be like, when they're like, Cass, what do you think? I'm like, can you repeat what you just said?
That's the thing. It's like, if it happens to us, it happens to the entire team. And I'm like, God damn, like sometimes what we say is really important and it's just not going through. And it's like, how do you, and that's really the crux of running a remote team, right? Is how to manage that type of dynamic. And so like,
it's all this indirect, like these little things that drive, how quickly you want to build this rocket ship together. And of course, doing it in person has its advantages.
Totally.
But, there's a big cost around it. What is the cost? You tell me.
Well, the cost of talent is definitely going to be more if it's localized, especially in North America. That's one. The space, well, actually, you know what? Renting an office space is much cheaper now, I would say.
Because they're all empty.
Remote. Yeah, everything is remote.
Yeah,
that is cheaper, but still, it's a hard cost that could have been.
Can you share how much it is for us at WeWork?
Like 4,000. Yeah, it's.
But then if we were to go to a space that wasn't like the WeWork and get the amenities, you're probably getting a lot bigger space.
Yeah, you can rent a whole apartment with like 3 rooms and like a lounge place. We talked about this. We're like, oh, this could be our we can have a bed here. We can, and all of a sudden,
no one's having a bed in the office.
Not this office, but if we were to rent an apartment and we were like, turn this into office.
Oh yeah, we talked about the studio
type of thing. We're like, and by the time we finish flushing everything out, we're like, God damn, this is like renting another house or like renting another place for us to live in.
And then maintenance, management, supplies, equipment, printers, tech setup, tech support.
The biggest thing is also like how you scale your team, because there are times when you're scaling up, scaling down. And so being able to have more of a flexible workplace allows us to scale up and scale down accordingly, which is great.
Which is a great benefit in a shared office space with WeWork, because maybe you don't need an 8-person office at a certain period, and you can shrink down to a 2-person office and vice versa.
Yeah. That's the thing. Yeah. So I think like for entrepreneurs listening, or even considering about whether or not to go remote or to go full on office, I think like having a hybrid is a good idea. Yeah.
Hybrid, have a physical space, get inspired.
I like that as a takeaway. Get inspired. So definitely have a space, but probably just for a few people, 1 or 2 to begin with, depending on your team size. And then from there onwards, you can slowly scale to a bigger room. But at the same time, don't be afraid of hiring remote just because you don't see them, because there's a lot of benefit from hiring remote as well.
Yeah. Cool.
Anything else you want to cover? No, pretty much it. Well, this is pretty much it for today's episode about remote or office. I'm like blanking out now. Okay.
Yeah. For working. Yeah.
Anyways, make sure you guys stay tuned for the next episode as we dive deeper into how to build a startup while raising a family of 2. We have lots more to share.
Thank you. See ya.